Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're getting into this third segment talking about the 2024 NHL Mock Draft Part 2. Before I get into that, if you're enjoying the show and want to support the creators here at the GSMC Sports Network even more than you guys already do just by watching, just by commenting, use the tips and donations link at the gsmcpodcast.net. It really does go a long way for all the creators here. But with that being said, we're going to get right into this third segment going with my mock draft part 2, 20 to 11. This is my personal mock draft. I do this every year just by myself, just doing the first round, seeing how close I can get to the actual draft. Last year, I was pretty far off. The year before that, however, I did have a lot of prospects going in where they did go. I had Shane Wright falling as far as he did. I had Logan Cooley being the best player from that draft. I did have him going number 1 overall, but of course he didn't. However, he has been the best player from that 22 draft class so far, so a little bit of credibility, I would say, with that. But we're going straight into the number 20. It's Liam Greentree from the Windsor Spitfires. The captain of Windsor this past season in the OHL had a fantastic year, kind of coming out of nowhere, and that's why I have him a little bit lower. I would have him higher on this list if he had this production in his draft minus 1 year, but to do this in this season is very impressive. Liam Greentree, 90 points in 64 games played from the right wing on Windsor's first line, 36 goals as well, half a goal per game is very impressive for this young guy out of Windsor. In other people's ranking, they have him kind of all over the place. I see as low as 31 and as high as 14. I am kind of in the middle. I am going number 20 to who is number 20 right now. It would be the Islanders via the Tampa Bay Lightning. So I think that would be a very good pick for the New York Islanders. Adds an offensive player to that team that just is looking for just a little bit more. But next in my mock draft, we're going to 19. It's going to go Igor Chernyshov from the MHL. Igor Chernyshov is Dynamo Moskva. I believe that's how you pronounce that. I've always been awful with these KHL and MHL teams. But for Dynamo Moskva, he had 28 points in 22 games played in the MHL, which is the second tier of the Russian Hockey League. So I really like looking at these guys that came out of the KHL because that means that their team trusted him enough to be in that professional hockey league at such a young age. Igor has had time in the KHL the last 2 years. He played in the KHL. He had 4 points in 34 games this past season, and the season before that he had a goal in 5 games played. So it seems like Dynamo Moskva has not trusted in him too much, so that's why I have him a little bit lower than some guys have him. I'm seeing a lot of teens, 18, 17, 13, as low, though, as 38 in McKean's hockey rankings. So kind of a prospect, and you're going to see a trend in the middle round or in the middle of the first round here in this draft, kind of all over the place because of how, this draft isn't the best one that we've seen. So when you're looking at the first round talent, maybe it's a second round guy last year, so Igor Chernyshov could be a very good player in the NHL. He's a power forward that plays great defensive hockey, of course, from Russia. That's kind of their style. So we'll see how he plays if he does play in the NHL in the upcoming years. Trevor Connolly, however, is my 18th overall pick here. Trevor Connolly going to the Chicago Blackhawks via the New York Islanders, going to the Chicago Blackhawks via the New York Islanders. The US U18 prodigy Trevor Connolly played for the Tri-City Storm last year of the USHL. He's more of a offensive forward. He's a very fast guy. He's 6'1", a left wing, so can be very productive in the NHL. Has that size for it. He has great hands. He's a great stick handler or puck handler. However, his defense is a little lacking at some points, which is why I have him a little bit lower. I think that he, if you give him the puck in space, he will create a lot from it. But how often will he get that puck in space, and will that lead to more minus than it will to plus at the NHL level is my concern for him. But he has played very well in his career at Tri-City Storm. 78 points in 52 games played last year, 47 points in 57 games played the year prior in his draft minus 1 year is very impressive. Played on the World Juniors U18 team for the United States of America. That's that right picture you're seeing on your screen right now. Had 9 points in 7 games played in a very important international competition for these young guys. So very impressive. Going, however, to number 17, it's Beckett Sinecki. I have butchered his name so often, but for Beckett, he is a fantastic forward out of the Oshawa Generals of the OHL. He played for Canada's U17 team in the World Hockey Classic. Got 3 assists in 3 games played back a year ago. This previous season didn't play on any Canadian World Juniors team, which is a little concern for a first round pick. But had a pretty solid season and a great playoffs, which is what kind of rose him on the boards. He also had a good combine as well, which is why I have him at 17. 10 goals in 16 games played in the OHL playoffs is so impressive, and that's why I have him where he's at. He's also more of a playmaker than he is a goal scorer, so for Beckett, he had a great playoffs, and it really rocketed up a lot of people's boards. He is all the way up to 9 in the Elite Prospects ranking. Bob McKenzie have him at 19, Craig Button at 11, so kind of all over the place as we were talking about with these mid-round picks. But a fantastic forward that can be an offensive, produce offensively for the Washington Capitals is who I have taken, Beckett Sinek. Moving on now, it's Michael Haig, the University of Michigan commit. He played for the Chicago Steel. He is going number 16 to the St. Louis Blues on my rankings. He's kind of all over the place, all the way back as 36th in the Bob McKenzie ranking, but all the way up to number 10th in the NHL Central Scouting, 13th in the Recruit Scouting. Kind of all over the place, as I said, but for the Chicago Steel, he was very impressive in the USHL. 75 points in 54 games played, including 4 points in 2 playoff games. He is going to play for the University of Michigan next year, which I think will help his development so much. We'll see how he plays in the NCAA, that a lot of guys, have great development playing under in college. So we'll see what he does when he goes to the NCAA next year. I think that he could be of use to the St. Louis Blues. The center prospect, more of a playmaker as well, kind of like Benek Sinek. But moving on, we have Michael Branseg Yard. It's these names are very hard to pronounce. But for Michael Branseg Njord, I think that he could be a very impressive prospect, as he kind of can play all over the ice, left wing, center, right wing, from Oslo or Norway. One of the Norwegian prospects in this draft class that are very impressive, it's him and one more, a defenseman that we'll be getting to later in this mock. But he's all the way up to number 9 in some rankings, number 6 in Ferrari's rankings for THN. I think he can be a very great player. He is a more power forward with a 6'1" frame. He's great defensively, so I think he could be of use at the NHL level. He has had a lot of professional hockey experience, 18 goals or 18 points in 41 games played in the Norwegian top league this past year. In Norwegian International in his U20 tournaments, he had 12 points in 9 games played. Norway in the IHF World Classic, he had 5 points in 7 games played. So playing already on, these professional hockey leagues, he has that under his belt, which I think goes for him. For Michael Branseg-Njord, I have him at 15th, going to the Detroit Red Wings at 15th. Moving on, Consta Helenius is my next pick, going to the San Jose Sharks via the Pittsburgh Penguins. For Consta Helenius, he is a fantastic center/right wing. He plays in Finland. He is from Tappara in the Liga, where he had 36 points in 51 games played in the Swedish top league. Very impressive. Anybody that's playing in these top leagues in Europe, any production that you're seeing kind of that you see from the top guys in the OHL is so impressive, especially if it's in a league like Liga, who has stiff competition all around it. He was also very good in the International World Juniors, 11 points in 13 games played for the Finland U20 team. For the UA team, he had 17 points in 5 games. So he definitely could be producing sooner than later at the NHL level. Is ranked 8th in Bob McKenzie's ranking, 6th in Craig Button's ranking. I have him dropping a little bit because I don't know how good he will be when it comes to NHL ice. That is always a concern with these Swedish and Scandinavian prospects. Next, I have Stian Solberg from from Norway. That's all. I cannot pronounce this team, and I'll be the first one to admit that. He is a defensive prospect that is a huge guy. He is, or I guess he's not a huge guy, but he's 6'2", 200 pounds. But more of that defensive defenseman style. He hits very hard in his Norwegian on his Norwegian team. Having 15 points in 42 games played in Norway is a little bit concerning. However, I do think that he could be a good defensive prospect for the Minnesota Wild, who I have taken him at 13th. Moving on to number 12, it's Carter Yakimchuk. That's it. From the Calgary Hitmen of the WHL, 71 points in 66 games played in the WHL is not that impressive. Of course, it's over a point per game, but in the WHL, as we're going to see from Berkeley Cat in my next a little glimpse into who my number 11 guy is. But for Carter, he can be all the way up to 5th in people's rankings and be all the way as low as 20th in other people's rankings. So all over the board, I have him at 12th because I do like his game overall. He is a 6'3" defenseman, which he does play on that offensive style, the assistant captain for the Calgary Hitmen this past year, which is always impressive. I have him this high because I do think that I like his two-way style, but he is more of an offensive defenseman, so he does need to work a little bit on that back style. He is 6'3". He could use his frame to his advantage, and I think that he could be very good in the NHL going forward. My number 11 pick for the Buffalo Sabres and the final pick of this mock draft is Berkeley Catton. He is, if you guys play NHL or EA NHL, he's a fantastic prospect in that game. But in real life, how good is he as a prospect? I think he could still be amazing. For the Canadian U18 team, he had 4 points in 7 games played, and even earlier last year in the U17 team, he had 12 points in 7 games played. For the Spokane Chiefs, he was an assistant captain this past year of the WHL, having 116 points in 68 games played, 54 goals in 68 games played. That's insane production. He could definitely jump up as high as maybe even 5. Maybe even somebody has him at 3 in their rankings. I think that he could be a very great prospect, but there are a lot of defensemen that I have above him, as I think that this is the class that a lot of teams are going to look to get D early, and Berkeley Catton will just fall to 11th, who I think will be a steal. I think he's a fantastic NHL prospect who can do a lot on the ice. So that is my part 2 of my 2024 NHL mock draft. Berkeley Catton going number 11 to the Buffalo Sabres will round it out. When I get back from my third break of the night, we'll be talking about Pascal Vincent and his firing from the Columbus Blue Jackets and what that means for the Columbus Blue Jackets going forward.